afternoon. I want to call to order the Surrey Police Board. First of all, the Surrey Police Board recognizes that our work takes place on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. I also would like to introduce Atar Joel, his first meeting as a board member. Welcome, Atar. It's glad to see you here, and we'll be excited to have you as a member of our Surrey Police Board as we move forward. So, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor to be part of the board, and I really look forward to the opportunity to build the SPS from the ground up and shape it to the needs of the community.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, under adoptions, number one is adoption of the agenda of February 23rd. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. And second one is adoption of minutes, January the 19th. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. We have one delegation, the Foundry Surrey, Jennifer Lowry and Melissa Lee, and I think they're both, you're both here and on camera, so it's all yours.
Thanks for having us today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the Surrey Police Board for inviting us today. We're going to just take a few minutes of your time to just introduce the Foundry Surrey and explain where we're at. So I'd like to start out. My name is Jen Lowry. I am the manager of Foundry Surrey, and I'm here with my colleague, Melissa Lee, who is the program coordinator for Foundry Surrey. We're both employed by PCRS, which is Pacific Community Resources Society. It is a nonprofit that is the host agency bringing the Foundry to Surrey, and it's a nonprofit that has over 35 years experience supporting youth and families in community. To start us off today, we usually also do a land acknowledgement. So Melissa, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jen. So we acknowledge with gratitude that our place of work is on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Semiahmoo, Katsi, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, ICAT, and Swazi First Nations. And this is a practice that we do both at PCRS and at Foundry Surrey as a way of doing ongoing reconciliation work and a way to embed that into our meetings and our presentations. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. So I'll just start out, and I just kind of want to highlight Foundry and what a Foundry is, and I'm going to talk about it in the larger scale of what it looks like across the province, and then Melissa's going to just kind of speak to where we're at here in our community of Surrey. So the Foundry provides wellness. It's available for youth and families across the province, youth aged 12 to 24. This is a provincial initiative. So what we have is presently there's 18 different foundries either have been opened or in the development stage of opening in the communities. Surrey has been in the third phase and we're still in our developmental stage, so our doors aren't open yet. And the idea is that the foundries will eventually, there'll be over 50 foundries across the province. Next slide, sorry. Great. And speaking about the reason that we have foundries and what the foundry, who it is supporting, and it is specifically for youth aged 12 to 24, and we know those are really important years when we look at mental health needs as well as substance use and all supports and wellness. 1 in 4 Canadian youth are affected by mental illness and problematic supplement substance use. Okay, next slide. And then 70% of mental health problems in Canada begin in childhood and adolescent years. And that just speaks to the value and the importance of having a foundry in our community to be able to specifically support those needs. And the next slide, it shows how it's supporting it. So again, I already mentioned the ages and how it works. All foundries across the province have the same 5 core services. Physical health needs are met there. So that's primary care physicians, nurse practitioners, registered nurses, LPNs, mental health workers and clinician and supports, substance use supports, as well as peer supports. The peer supports are both youth and families, and so that's folks with lived experience being able to help navigate some of the services. And then the final service is the social services, and in each community this looks a little bit different depending on the needs of the community and the specific needs of each unique community that has a Foundry in it. And what you look to do when you build a Foundry is look for the gaps in services, and what we want to do is have the Foundry fill those gaps so we're not having duplicating services. And how it looks of how Foundry supports youth and families across the province is we're going to have a site like we will in Surrey, which we're in the midst of developing. They also have a fabulous website, which both youth and caregivers and families can access today, and it talks about different resources, whether it's mindfulness or different support groups for parents. And then they also have the virtual app, and this was started at the very beginning of COVID. And the idea is for all youth and families who are unable to actually go to a site for many different reasons, can still access mental health as well as primary care supports and peer support today through the app. And we're going to give you some information at the end of today so that you can have that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to talk a little bit more about what the Foundry looks like in Surrey today.
Thank you. So now that you all have a better sense of what a Foundry is, we'll dive into about the project of Foundry Surrey and where the project is at, what the community leadership model looks like, and share a little bit about what we're hearing from community and some community input and feedback and the themes that we're hearing to bring forward to the development of these services. Our vision statement at Foundry Surrey is a safe and inclusive place where young people and families find flexible, accessible, non-judgmental support and care to meet their needs. And this was a vision statement that was built with our community, including the voices of the youth and families at our tables. And it's a vision statement and values, set of values that we bring forward to inform our work as we move forward. So Foundry has a model of really looking at the community as not only as the collaborators, but also as the experts and the leaders who really know the services in their community, who have their own experiences, who have their stories and perspectives to bring to really develop something strong for the community. And so on the left side, you have PCRS, the structure of PCRS, and what that looks like to help bring the Foundry to Surrey. And then on the right side, we have our Foundry Surrey community leadership tables. We have four. We have an executive leadership table and a community leadership table. And these tables are where our community partners currently sit. And they're a mix of agencies and not-for-profit organizations who are a mix of who will be the lead operators of the services at Foundry Surrey, and are also the managers and directors and direct care workers who are going to come together and really help build the services for Surrey and get into the conversations about what operations and programming will really look like in Surrey. And then we have our family engagement leadership table and our youth engagement leadership table. And we're calling them leadership and not advisory because we very much see the youth and families as leaders in this project. And the families, we have 5 really dedicated family members, and at the youth table we have 12 youth members who represent the youth demographic of ages 12 to 24, and they really bring the youth and families and caregivers' voices and perspectives to really inform our work. And so that's what our community leadership model looks like. And just a little bit about the work that's been accomplished so far since the announcement of a Foundry Surrey in 2020. We've been doing a lot of work developing those community leadership tables that I just showed and spoke to. And ever since then, a lot of work in the air and ongoing and constantly overlapping. I'm going to go over them very briefly, and I'm aware that there's a lot of information, so if there's questions or inquiries, we are leaving our contact information for any offline inquiries, and we'll answer them happily. A lot of community engagement work that we're doing, such as today, we're doing lots of info sessions and presentations. We both are very deep in the work, and we know what a Foundry is, and we believe in it, and we are aware that not everyone knows what a Foundry is. So lots of info sessions and presentations and building relationships and connections in the community. We're doing lots of focus groups to hear directly from community on things around the site and our services and what that needs to look like for them, and to really reflect and represent the needs of the community of Surrey. We're doing some fund development work. We're looking at a site, and that's ongoing. We're trying hard to find a home that really reflects the needs of the youth and families, the things that we're hearing, which I will share in a little bit. We're also doing lots of service integration and program development work now with our community leadership table. They are breaking off into working groups and really talking about the operations and what those pathways will look like and how we're really going to bring those services together in one center. And we recently launched our Instagram as well, some social media development. So lots of really good work being done so far. And then a little bit of what we're hearing from community at our focus groups. Hearing long wait times are a huge barrier in getting supports. So integrated services can really make access more immediate, and a Foundry will bring that model to the community where services can be accessed in one place. Youth are often turned away because their mental health is not severe enough. So there's an awareness that more early intervention and prevention services are needed. And stigma and stereotypes are a huge barrier, and cultural barriers as well. So we're hearing that there is a need for non-judgmental and culturally safe care and supports, and that will look different in different ways. And finally, also a huge theme that we're hearing is youth want services that are transit accessible and offering flexible time schedules throughout the day and also throughout the week, so that youth and families don't have to take a day off to find help and go to an appointment. So that's really, really important, and these are really key themes that we're continuing to hear from community. And that's the end of our presentation. We do encourage people to stay connected with us at Foundry Surrey and follow us on our journey. We are leaving our contact information there, and I will also put it in the chat. Please do visit the Foundry website and our webpage, where you can also complete our community feedback survey online, and follow our Instagram and YouTube for updates. And we'll end our presentation off with a special video of a story of a youth who grew up in Surrey, and she will talk to her experience and really share why she thinks a Foundry will help youth like her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pain, anxiety, addictions,
cocaine,
alcohol, pot, vaping.
Molly.
I'm overwhelmed.
Who am I?
You feel lost, like you're just aimlessly wandering.
I've been shuffling around for years.
I hear, get over it.
Get over it.
Get over it. I kind of just feel alone.
Feel alone. I had no idea where to go for help. Sometimes I just want to be gone. You know? Gone.
Foundry is a place where a youth can just walk in and access the services that they're looking for.
Foundry is multiple people wrapping their arms around and trying to support you.
Services are better together. They could prevent so much suffering. Foundry is just this hidden gem that should be shouted from the rooftops.
My name's Shauna Narayan. I'm 24 years old, and I live in Surrey. Went to high school here, and have my entire family here. So I'm currently studying at UBC, and I'm doing my Master of Science in Experimental Medicine. I see myself as someone that has, high-functioning anxiety. So, I might be, high-achieving, but I also have anxiety. So, throughout high school, I always had, high grades and was, very active, had few jobs at one point and was on the basketball team, volleyball team, so like very active in the community while I was like volunteering and working as well. And then transitioning to like university life, I was feeling really stressed and overwhelmed, feeling like I'm on edge at times, like if I have a lot to do, thinking that like I can't do it. It was inhibiting my everyday life, and that's when you know that it's a problem. I did stay at home for a while to try and manage what I was feeling, and there weren't services for youth, or at least I wasn't aware of them. And I was kind of surprised that there wasn't a Foundry in Surrey already, considering how big it is, how diverse, the number of youth here, and the unique challenges that Surrey has. There should have been one here a long time ago. So, yeah. I think a lot of the times when people are seeking care, they feel like they are going in silos, and so they are being referred from one place to another. And I think like having to tell your story over and over again with different healthcare professionals can be really challenging, especially if you've experienced trauma or other challenges, because you might feel like the healthcare system is not listening to you. The great thing about the Foundry's framework is that if someone comes in with a challenge, that there are multiple people wrapping their arms around and trying to support you in that way. So whether it's, a physician or a counselor, they're going to find the right person for you to get that help. And it can be like a one-stop shop for youth to get the services that they need, whether it's for substance use, for sexual health, or mental health, or housing supports and other social services. So I think that can be really beneficial for youth to have this kind of hub where they can get all these services that they may need instead of trying to go to all these different locations, which can be very difficult in a place like Surrey. It's difficult at first, taking that first step, because you don't always think that you need it, but it's making sure that you're getting those like preventative services before it actually is like a crisis point. And so I think like Foundry could be a solution to a lot of those problems. Being a part of Foundry and contributing to such a great city that needs services like this is great, and I'm glad that I can contribute in some way.
Foundry Surrey will be a place where we aren't worried about feeling out of place.
Feels welcome and safe.
I'm visible.
People feel safe to share what's on their mind.
You are important, and you count.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Melissa, for the presentation. It's certainly very interesting and encouraging to see the work that you're doing and actually starting to work at. So we want to thank you for that effort that you're being put into it, and certainly we want to support you in any way we can. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
We'll go on now to reports. The first report on the chief report on Surrey Police Service Integrated Communication and Tactics Training.
Mr. Chair, I believe there was a question there on the floor from Director Model.
Director Model.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't know whether or not you were allowing the board to ask a couple of questions from Jennifer and Melissa, or just compliment them on their presentation as well.
Well, I think from the question point of view, they even suggested that anybody could ask questions of them offline. They left their communications up there, and certainly we can refer them to the Foundry if anybody has any questions. But if you would like to say something, go ahead.
Yeah, I would, just so the group and the board also recognizes it. First of all, I'd like to say that PCRS is a phenomenal organization within Surrey. They did say they were a not-for-profit organization. I think they're also a charity, so they are able to accept donations with a tax receipt. I would also recommend that they register with Surrey Cares Community Foundation, where they do give out as Surrey's Community Foundation monies to groups, and I think this would be a very good group to align with our foundation for Surrey as well. And just wanted to mention those couple of things to the board members and the people on the call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Any other directors want to have a comment? Okay, not seeing anywhere. Chief, maybe you can go ahead with your integrated communications and tactic training report.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I will make a comment about Foundry there. I think there's some possible relationships that can occur with the Surrey Police Service, and we'll follow up offline with them. I thought it was a good presentation. Segueing into integrating communications and tactics training, this is an extremely important area in policing, specifically for SPS, because we put in a lot of time into developing a very, very comprehensive program that I believe the public and the board should be aware of. I've got two of my operational skills trainers here, Scott Baglio and Aaron Hill, and I'll hand it over to them for a brief presentation and then possible questions thereafter. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Police Board, and Chief, thanks for having me today. So, like the Chief was talking about, I'm here to talk about some training that we provide all of our members. It's referred to as ICAT, an acronym for the Integrated Communications and Tactics. So let's have you go to the next slide. So this picture here, before we kind of get into the training, kind of imprints where we're going with our training and why. And this photo was taken in December of 2014. Staten Island grand jury declined to indict NYPD officer Daniel Pentello of criminal wrongdoing in the death of Eric Garner. With the jury determined there was not probable cause that the crime was committed, and the NYPD officer and delivering a vote of a no true bill. So basically, he was released, and they deemed the use of force as a lawful act, and it met policy. But as you can see by this photo, there was a major outcry by the public, and there's waves of protests. And as one of our tests is the public and how they view our use of force, and it was quite clear that this was not to their approval. And over the last few years, there's been a few of these incidents where the public just, maybe were there lawfully and act lawfully and morally and meet policy, but the public just doesn't approve with the use of force. So moving forward, we needed to look at the way we were training our officers, because clearly the public trust was in a decline. So the next photo. So the big thing with us, with SPS, is we started looking at how do we train our officers, and we took the motto of we're training guardians and not warriors. And basically, what we're saying is the definition of a guardian is a person who has the legal right and responsibility of taking care of someone who cannot take care of himself or herself. And at the end of the day, we're not soldiers. And it really comes down to not only keeping the community and officers safe, that's always paramount, but we really need to actually keep these people that are in crisis, and sometimes referred to as the subject of the person that we're dealing with. We need to keep them safe as well. And ultimately, with these types of tactics that we're training, we're not only keeping them safe, but we're saving lives, and we're also saving careers. Next slide, please. So what we have seen in in the public and in policing, there's been a steady increase in violent encounters. And what's happening is that we're seeing more and more calls of since 2000, more so in the last few years. There's been a rapid increase into officer-involved shootings in Canada specifically. And of those calls, half of them are related to persons or people in crisis. And the trends require a new and different approach to training our police in de-escalation. Next slide. And so that training is what we call as ICAT. And basically, it's a comprehensive training program that integrates communications and tactics with the goal of reducing the need for the use of force. And sorry, I'm just going to catch up here. Sorry, can you let's go back there? So traditionally, with training, with the de-escalation and the tactical side, they're generally have, in the past, in legacy training, they're trained separately, and still a lot of agencies that are training it that way. And what I mean by that is we specifically train tactics, and it has its place, and then on the de-escalation side, as police officers, we're mandated to take an online course every 3 years on crisis intervention and de-escalation, but we never actually put the two of them together and actually test these tactics and these skills and train these skills. So this is where the ICAT comes in. So next slide. So this is kind of the model that we use with our members. So on the left, you see that big colorful graph, and that's the National Use of Force framework that all police officers, municipal police officers use to help them navigate use of force. And then on the right of that, you see the circle, which is our National Crisis Intervention De-Escalation Model. And they kind of intertwine, and that's the standard practice that we use, again, to help us manage these situations. What we're doing in SPS is now we're adding another layer, and we use these acronyms, ILEAPS, which is basically we teach our members how to use active listening. And with patrol, that's kind of our acronym we use with our members on teaching them tactics. So again, they're kind of interlaid with good tactics. It actually gives us time by creating space, and with that time and space, we can make better critical decisions, and it gives us the ability to actually talk to people and try to build that relationship, that rapport, and ultimately de-escalate the situation without using any type of force. And then the big thing with the training is we actually rep this out. And traditionally, that's not the case, where it's been, again, like I said, something we've done online, and then we do our tactics separately. We're now actually putting people in situations, and we're repping out these crisis situations. Next slide. In the course, we talk about the universal truths of human interaction. So there's 5 of them. And for the most part, I think people know them, but they just need to be reminded of them. And then we actually integrate them into, again, the training, and they get to use these tools. And the first one, as we talked about, is people they need to be respected. And so we sometimes have to remind officers that, that's a good rule of thumb, is people need to be respected. There's the old adage, with police officers in the past, the legacy training was basically, it was ask, tell, make. We'd ask somebody to do something, and if they didn't do it, we would tell them to do it. And if they didn't do that, then we'd go up and we'd make them do it. And that's where we started to kind of get into that gray zone. We're still lawfully in the execution of our duty, and it's meeting policy, but the public is not really buying into it, and it became a little bit of a gray zone for us. So we really have gotten away from that, and our focus now is more on, again, focusing on these universal truths on human interaction. So second one is, people would rather be asked than told. And the example I can give to that is, people become more compliant, and if we ask them to do things, ultimately they need to get to that point, but we see that you just get more compliance when you actually ask people to do things instead of telling them. There's a desire to know why, why are we doing what we're doing, and we're teaching our members to, that's a good, it's a good lesson to, you can explain why we're doing. Everything doesn't have to be like top secret or secret anymore. It's just going to help move this along and build that rapport of that person, and ultimately end the situation without having to use force. The fourth one is they prefer to have options rather than threats, and again, we like to give them options. And finally is people like to have a second chance. So, we're there for a situation. They may be in crisis because of something they've done. And, there's stuff that we have to meet as far as like potentially arresting a person, taking them in, but we can explain that to them and let them know that you will have your chance to, we'll get you the help that you need, but just letting them know that we're not there to harm them. We want to give them every chance they need and give them that second chance and give them the help they need. I just put up there the 80-20 rule, and police officers, they like to talk, and they need to be reminded the best way for active listening is this 80-20 rule, and it's you need to be listening 80% of the time and talking 20% of the time. And actually, it's even more. You should be listening more. And I like to say that with active listening, hearing is an action, but listening is actually a process, and it does take work, and our members need to work on that skill, especially under stress. The next slide, please. And then we talk about with our members, so there's that component of a officer's emotional wellness. And so what that is we talk about, like, officers are put into stressful situations and their trauma builds over time, which we call this vicarious trauma. And so officers need to check themselves once in a while. They need to make sure that their emotional wellness is well, and so they can go into these high-stress situations and they're able to regulate themselves, because we tell them you can't expect to regulate somebody or bring them down if you can't regulate yourself. So we tell them if they're high emotions, the rational thinking goes down. So put it in simple terms, if somebody's in that 10, that high, like ramped up, and we go in at a 10, then there's very little effect, and you're going to have a hard time getting this person down to where we need them to have a rational conversation. So we tell our officers they need to check themselves, regulate themselves, and go into lower emotions, so they'll have more success in helping this person get out of this crisis situation. Next slide. And then finally, once we go through the 8-hour day for the final few hours, we run them through scenarios. So we specifically have 5 scenarios, and the beauty of this is we actually bring live actors in, and instead of traditionally as we've used police officers, and police officers are very robotic, and they really don't solicit the reaction that we want from our officers. And the actors are really able to kind of disassociate themselves and go into these crisis modes and really put that stress on our officers and see how they react and use the tools that we provided them to work through these situations. And I can just give you a little snapshot of the scenarios that we're currently using for now. Moving forward, we're actually looking at different scenarios that we can introduce, but we have ones with related to weapons, so they'll have a knife, and we work on traditionally officers are very focused on that knife, and that's only part of the problem, and they kind of lose focus on the bigger issue here is this person is in crisis and we need to de-escalate. So we give them tools to work around that knife and then make it more about the person and getting the help they need. We have a scenario where it's a suicidal, so talking that person off the ledge. We've just introduced a scenario that involves an Indigenous person, and we've actually reached out to the community through one of our people and sensitive to their the beliefs and making sure that they're okay with this. And we've come up with a scenario involved with the Indigenous youth and a domestic situation, and we really work on the actual trauma side, so that multi-generational trauma, and we're trying to treat our officers on how to manage those situations as well. And then moving forward, we'll look at other stuff within the community that is affecting them and how we can make our officers better in dealing with people in crisis. Last slide. And really, in summary, the ICAT training is it's about saving lives, so we don't have to take people's lives and give them better tools to de-escalate the situation without using force, as well as saving careers.
Thank you, Aaron. I'll just summarize and conclude. We've seen this work very well for our members that are presently deployed in Surrey, and we keep evolving this program, and I think that we just get better and better as far as balancing out the use of force, de-escalation, and solving the crisis that person is in at that time. Thank you.
One thing there, so I'd just like to
note here. In summary, too, we've had some really good results from this training. And at SPS here, we pride ourselves on the best training possible for our members. There was recently a research article from the University of Cincinnati that did a year-long study with the Louisville Metro Police Department, and they saw a statistically significant reduction in use of force incidences by 28%. Citizen injuries were down by 26%, and officer injuries were down by 36%. So this was really good to show that we are doing the right training here at SPS and that we have that evidence based to back it up.
Sorry, guys, I forgot to mention. I did mention we run this with all of our officers it's an 8-hour training day, and then moving forward, this will be part of our yearly training cycle. So we'll add it into our scenario-based training, and it'll be forever growing and evolving, and it'll be part of the training moving forward every year.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. Excellent report, and it's nice to see the type of work that we're doing out there. So very, very good report. Any questions of any directors? Okay, Director Model, sorry, it's hard to see your name, so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that presentation. And Chief, back to you. In order for these gentlemen to train, do they have to be officially certified through a program for this ICAT training?
The operational skills people, and we have, I believe, 9 at the present time, given our heavy training load. So in various disciplines, yes, there's a certificate program, etc. This particular program is something that other agencies, my former agency, developed, and also U.S. And so as you can see, Aaron is from Delta and Scott is from U.S. And this was in the works for the last, I'm going to say 4 years. And there is no particular certificate program for this. It's a little bit of a one-of-a-kind. That we have something going here.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions of any directors? Okay, don't see any. Then a motion for receiving the report. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Our next item is reporting requirements. Chief?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, guys. Great job. We'll follow up tomorrow. The reporting requirements, R002, really speaks to the issue of that we have 18 different agencies represented in the SPS, and it lays out the requirements from the province that we have to ensure that the background of these individuals that come from these various agencies have met the basic training requirements, and we have to file that with the province, which we have done so. It is essentially for your information.
Okay, any comments, questions from board members? Okay, motion again for receipt, please. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Number 3, it's R003, training testimonial. Go ahead.
You're on mute, Chief.
Here.
Again, following up on the ICAT presentation, you can see in the training testimonials that it is very well received, and keeping in mind we have members, experienced police officers that have to go through this training. We have junior police officers, but most important, we have police officers from the various 18 agencies, and we have to ensure that we're on the same page. And our trainers go to great lengths to make sure that it is very productive training, and you could see by the comments it's extremely well received.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions from board members? Director Model?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to compliment you, Chief, I was so pleased and it warmed my heart to read the testimonials from those members who had written in. And on a personal note, I bumped into the team for mental health your mental health theme, and in a public coffee shop, and I went up and introduced myself, and I have to say how impressed I was with their professionalism, how they spoke to me, and also how they introduced themselves. And I just want to say kudos to you and your team for hiring such great staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Pass it on.
Thank you very much, Director Senator. Sorry.
You're right, Senator. Thank you, Chair. So I wanted to also say that it was great to read the testimonials and see how the training is going. It's wonderful to see. My question is just regarding this onboarding training. In terms of ongoing training and the yearly certifications, is this all part of the yearly, or like what part of that will be? Okay.
Yeah, so as the presenters mentioned, ICAT is every year, and there'll be a number of things that will be every year. Certainly, cultural sensitivity, fair and impartial policing, elements of that will occur every year, just as we have to qualify with our pistol every year. So what we intend to do once we get to the point where we have to have yearly refresher training, I will bring a training calendar that you can see exactly what is being taught and how many hours for each topic area. So we change it up depending on the policing environment each year. We change it up depending on criminal law decisions that impact policing on the front lines, and including policing standards from the province. So that all goes into the mix, and it's quite a big job to have this ongoing and keep fresh with this training every year.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any further questions? Seeing none, somebody move the receipt of the report. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Number 4 is diversity and hiring. It's R004. Chief?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Superintendent Mangat is on, and he will be speaking to this. Lab, thank you very much for attending, and Lab is from our support services and certainly has greater knowledge pertaining to hiring and diversity. Lab, over to you.
Thank you, Chief, and good afternoon, everyone. So currently, to date, we've hired 207 staff, 178 are sworn members, coming from 19 different police departments across the country, 78 coming from the RCMP, 100 outside the RCMP. Of the 178, 20% are female, 40% have self-identified as culturally diverse. Of the 40%, 7% as Indigenous, 20% as South Asian, and the remainder have identified as other cultural diverse backgrounds. Collectively speaking, 28 languages. And just on the new recruit side, we've had 500 plus applications received. Of those applications, 75% self-identified as being from a diverse background. We had moved just over 100 applications forward, which represented about 78% from a diverse background. We've shortlisted several for our May class and our fall class, and those that are shortlisted, we have a representation of about 72%, including South Asian, East Asian, Indigenous, biracial, female, and from the LGBTQ2S+ community.
Thanks, Lab. Any questions?
Any questions? Director Sutter?
Thank you, Chair. My question, and these are great numbers and looks great, but in terms of where we are and where we hope to be, with our goals for diversity, do we know where we are in comparison?
In terms of goals for diversity?
Yes.
I think that we're still right now, because of the experienced officer applications, and I think we're low on the female applicants, but we're still working towards that. We're still going through the pool, identifying the best police officers, but absolutely keeping in mind and identifying those candidates to ensure that our diversity numbers are met. But I don't have the difference today.
Thank you.
I can add to that in the sense of obviously we want to be representative of the community. And so we have meetings, discuss, and pay very, very close attention to that. And so far, we are successful. And kudos to Lab and the recruiting team that really scan the applications for not only the best people, but those that represent the community.
Okay, thank you. Any good report also. Director Adtar, or something Adtar? Yeah. Joel? Director Joel? I get it right yet. Director Joel.
No problem. I'm new, so I just had a question. Obviously, in the report, it indicated there's 28 languages spoken. Once we become the police of jurisdiction, is there going to be any attempt to try to match the language skills of our officers to the calls from the public?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've been looking at. We, from the recruiting side, we have started to look at the applications we're receiving and the backgrounds. Like, there's a low application count from, say, the Somalian community or something like that. So those are definitely areas that we're looking at. We're already working with our community engagement team to look at engagement for certain areas where we're seeing these trends that are a little bit lower and not representative of our community. So we're definitely looking at those trends.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, a motion to receive the report. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Thank you for the report. Also a very good report. Number 5, this is the purchase of 28 additional 2022 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor vehicles. Chief?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Chief Matsumoto will speak to this. You'll recall that we have 14 police vehicles on the way already. And Todd, over to you just to summarize this report in relation to the 2022 budget submission.
Thank you, Chief, and good evening, Mr. Chair and Directors. So the report in front of you lays out the police services request for $2.6 million for the purchase of 28 2022 Ford Explorers. As the Chief mentioned, this is essentially a contract extension from the initial 14 that was approved last year. Very difficult to predict when those 28 vehicles will arrive. If this is approved, I can give you a bit of an update on the 14. And even that is difficult to nail when they'll arrive. So we know for sure that there'll be initial 3 or 4 vehicles from that first order of 14 from last year that will be arriving on time. The rest of the vehicles Ford has indicated to us are suffering the same sort of supply line issues that all the other vehicles in North America seem to be experiencing as well. So we're no different. But because of that, I think that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to get this order in for 2022 as quickly as possible, because of those uncertain supply lines. Of course, these are the vehicles that our frontline police officers will be deploying in. For the most part, these are marked vehicles. They'll be having the Surrey Police Service markings on them. They'll be fully fitted out as frontline vehicles with all the pieces of equipment that go into that. The only difference in this next order of 28 is there will be 5 supervisor vehicles in that order. And any questions, please?
Any questions? Okay, don't see any questions. So a motion to receive the report and also to approve the expenditure of $2,600,000 for these vehicles. Somebody move it? Seconder? All in favor? Against? Carried. The next one is under Executive Director's Report. Melissa, board per diems for 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a report that we put out annually based on board remuneration for the year prior. So this report just outlines the work of the board, the number of meetings, and the focus of those meetings. So as you'll see, the board was extremely busy in 2021. And the growth of the organization, I think, would be a good indicator of how busy the board was as well. So there's a number of sort of big boulders: collective bargaining oversight, ongoing policy development and approval, zero-based budgeting development and approval, service and policy complaints, freedom of information requests, and the list goes on. So the board's been extremely busy. You did come in under budget for the per diems. However, if there had been a full board with the appointment of Director Joel late in the year, we would have basically been at budget. So I anticipate the same for 2022. We'll now post this on the website, on the SPV website for the public's awareness.
Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, motion to receive the report. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Under the Finance Committee budget update, year-to-date expenditures, Director Model.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just to advise the board that we don't have a formal report for you. We're still waiting for the formal stats for year-end from the city, and we'll have a more fully integrated report with year-end and then what we spent to date in the last month or so at the March meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a motion for receipt of that information. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Under information items, the first one is a letter to Director Gill, and this is appointment to the Human Resources and Compensation Committee. Just a motion for receipt. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. And Canadian Association of Police Governance membership fees. Melissa, do you want to make a comment on that?
Just a real quick one. You'll see that this was higher than last year because the organization has grown. So as SPS reaches its maximum, there will be a slightly higher fee, but this is the fee for 2022-23.
Okay, any questions? Call the question. Somebody move it. The receipt of it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Under correspondence, we have actually 3 letters. One letter from ADM Rideall, BC PPS Compliance Evaluation, and a second letter from ADM Rideall, and that's a major case management standards training requirements. Is there any questions from the board to the chief on those 2 items? Okay, motion to receive that. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. And one letter from the city of Abbotsford, which is a nice letter thanking us for our help during the recent floods that we had. Melissa, do you want to make any comments on this?
I could turn that over to the chief, I think.
Okay, chief.
Yes, this is just a thank you for the assistance that we provided, and it's much appreciated that we got that letter from Abbotsford Police Department, and we're ready to provide assistance to any agency in the Lower Mainland. It's basically what the police culture does in helping each other out in time of need. Thank you.
Okay, a motion for a receipt, please. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. There's no new business. The next meeting of the Surrey Police Board will be held on March 30th, 2022. A motion to hold the meeting in a closed session. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Motion adjournment. Seconder.